that okay? The
Yep.
VCE screen. Okay. Well, thanks for taking your lunch break on a beautiful day like this to talk about butterfly photography. And we're going to call this practical butterfly photography. Um, and I know that many of you, our senses, many of you are using phones for this. But we're going to talk about, lots of different cameras and basically how to be with butterflies and how to get, how to be efficient with them and how to get photos. This is one of the first digital photos I took of a butterfly, and it's juniper hair streak. I took it in the early stages of the Vermont Butterfly Atlas, which began in 2002. I did it was with a digital camera. I actually took pictures, in the olden days of film. I took some butterfly photos for the project with film. Um, and I shot this thing with a very old Nikon point and shoot, a 4 megapixel camera that all of your phones now have left in the dust. This is a crude and old camera, and I got a decent picture of a charismatic and uncommon butterfly with it. And if I can shoot with that, you're going to be able to get pictures with your phone or other cameras. And this is how we're going to approach it, basically. This is my friend Kristen. She's in a bog in Maine, and she's a birder. She has her mega zoom point and shoot, and she was photographing this little butterfly, which is called Northern Blue. It's known from only about 6 sites in Maine, a half dozen or so sites in Maine. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, you with your camera. We're going to talk about butterflies, and then we're going to talk about the various kinds of cameras that you can shoot with. And, I think the way this is going to work is I'm going to start talking about phones, and then I'll move to, can you see my cursor? Can you see my cursor?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. I should have made it bigger, but then you probably won't need it, but we're going to talk about these little point and shoots, and then we'll talk about DSLRs or mirrorless cameras. Um, and I'd like us to have time for discussion and questions. So I'm going to rush a little bit and try and make it so that I'm done by 12:45 or so. But I want to before I talk about cameras, I want to talk about you. And this is a picture of Marv Elliott, this is early stages of the project. And this is really about being with butterflies, how to comport yourself in order to get our objective here is to get data, is to get pictures. And notice he looks pretty relaxed there. He doesn't have his camera, he's got his binos, but he's got his camera, he's got his net. And, I'd say among the most important things is that I want you to sort of be relaxed yet alert. Like butterflies are aware. They're aware of our energy and our kinetic energy. And if you just sort of have a sense of calmness yet awareness, that's sort of how I begin among these insects before I even think about taking a photo. Some of you may already know some of the stuff. I'm going to go through it relatively fast, but the point here is watch your shadow. There's probably nothing better than these are creatures of the sun after all. So as you're maneuvering to get your picture, you don't want your shadow to pass over the butterfly, although you often want the sun at your back. You really want to be between the sun and the butterfly. So it's something you need to be aware of is your shadow. Your movement towards butterflies is not kinetic and fast. It's easy and stealthy like a cat. And then there's kind of a butterfly dress code. It's not, I don't know. It's not essential, but Marv's wearing a white t-shirt, and in the end that's probably fine, but I think the outfit, many of you, it tends to be muted colors, loose fitting, keep you cool in the summer. This is Roger Rittmaster. He's a butterfly photographer in Maine. This is Mike Lust. He's a biologist here in Vermont. This is Dennis Paulson, a biologist and really amazing biologist in Washington State. We're actually chasing dragonflies, but this is field gear, field clothing. I tend to not wear bright colors when I'm in the field. So, that's kind of a beginning notions of how to be among these butterflies yourselves. And then, once we start talking about photography, like the dirty little secret among photographers is that we shoot a lot. We really shoot a lot. And you need to be ruthless about this, or you don't need to be, but it helps. And I'll give you an example of this, which is a banded hair streak. And this is a perfectly acceptable voucher photograph of this relatively common hair streak. And it started out there, my encounter with it first. Can you see the butterfly in that photo? It's right there, right? And so that was I whipped out the phone and I started shooting. I didn't think about the settings. I just tapped the phone, tapped the shutter, and started shooting. And I got that shot, and that shot might have been good enough as a voucher evidence for this butterfly, but I just started moving towards it. That one's kind of blurry, took another shot, moved a little closer, took another shot. Hair streaks tend to be cooperative. They sit, they like to sit. And you'll learn this, and I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. I just kept shooting. And I said, okay, that one's good. I might have taken one more. And then after a little bit of editing, there's my final photo. So, I'd say the first thing, no matter what camera you're using, is start shooting early. Don't try to approach first. Get a shot and start shooting as you approach. And that's also true, believe it or not, of flight shots. So this really is a phone. This is really a phone thing more than other cameras. Like phones can be great for flight shots. Like this black swallowtail, I don't know, I can't remember. I was at a friend's house and we were walking along a road, and there it was, and my phone was in my pocket, and it didn't land. But I just pulled the phone out and started shooting. Bam, 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 bam. I was touching, like I wasn't getting fancy. There are ways to turn on your phone and have it constantly shoot. I just kept aiming the phone at the butterfly and hoping that one of them would work. I probably shot 20 shots of this thing. And so that's a flight shot of a black swallowtail. In fact, here's evidence that I shot it with my phone. There I am, and there's my phone, right? There's the butterfly's shadow between me and it. So shoot away with your phone and you can get flight shots. I mean, it does work, right? This was in the garden on the left. In the middle, I'm like walking in downtown Montpelier. Now, I'm not sure what this person thought when I pulled up my phone and started taking pictures, but I got this monarch in downtown Montpelier on the wing, and this one was in Maine. And there's my dog Odie on the deck there. So, phones are great, and phones including are just great for flight shots. I've actually taken flight shots of dragonflies with phones. So this can work. It's bam, 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 shoot, 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 tap, tap, tap. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a sec. And also, the other thing here is, okay, if you decide that I'm giving you like way too much technical information and you can't really deal with all the stuff I'm giving you, like I'm going to give you the key points when you see this slide. And this is Pelagonia faunus. This is green comma. And I think it's on really old like bear crap or maybe old worn coyote scat. I think it's bear. And they do this. They eat crap, butterflies for various reasons, mostly the males to get nitrogen. But when you see this slide, this is going to give you some of the essentials, the review. So watch for these. It'll be available for you if you want to review this thing. And so basically, overall, in terms of how you comport yourself, be ruthless and stealthy and deliberate. And it's like shooting butterflies is like voting, shoot early and often, particularly as you approach to get a better photo. And then sometimes the butterflies will be really cooperative like this. Some of you know this behavior. It's puddling behavior, where you'll see lots of butterflies, mostly males, and they're sitting on a road. These were beside a river. These are eastern-tailed blues. And I think an otter or something had peed on this stick beside the river. And so it was easy to photograph them. Same with, same with these clouded sulfurs. You can see this proboscis here. This thing was taking nutrients from the sand or moisture. And that's me photographing them. And the reason they were on the sand is because when I got to this little spot, I saw some butterflies flying around. And sorry, I peed right there. Okay. And this is kind of an old butterflyer's trick. If you get to a site, this is not mandatory as part of the project. We're not requiring this. But, if you get to a site and you pee on the road, or, discreetly, of course, and then go about your business, your other business, and then come back later, you may often see butterflies getting nitrogen from your urine. And it can be a great way to wrap up your survey at a particular site, because you get surprises sometimes. So there they are. They are the sulfurs. So be ruthless and stealthy and deliberate, and, pee on the road or sand or wherever when you get to a site. It can help you get some easy photos. Watch where you lay down, like me. Don't lay in your pee. So it's just some basics on how you can be with these insects. And I want to talk just briefly about the butterflies themselves. And by the way, I really do want to have a discussion or leave time at the end for questions. So we'll hold them until I get to the end. And so these are brown elfins, making more brown elfins. And I don't have a lot to say about butterfly behavior other than, and these are the 6 families of butterflies. We've only got 5 of them, unfortunately, in Vermont, that we'll see in North America. We'll only see these 2, the middle ones. No, and that one, skippers. We've got 3 of them. Half of them. Oh, no, we've got 4 of them. Sorry. These 2, sorry. What I meant to say is we will see all these families except the one on the right, the metal mark. But only these 3 species in Vermont. But my point here is that butterflies by family have their own sort of characteristic behaviors. And this one upper left is a hair streak. This one is actually called, it's Colophorus dumatorum. I think it's called like thicket hair streak or something. And when you see the trick for photographing these is finding them in the first place, because they're the size of your thumbnail and somewhat obscure. But once you get the search image for a gossamer winged butterfly, the Lycaenidae, this family, you'll start to see more of them. And once you kind of get a sense for them, you'll realize that they're fairly cooperative for photography. And a good way to get a sense of these butterflies is to look at the azures now. The spring azure, they're not, the Lucia azures, these early flying azures of spring. Those are in the gossamer winged butterfly family. Get a sense for their size and habits and their way they perch. And you're apt to start seeing them later through the season when they're more difficult. Some of the more difficult to photograph or detect species are around. Whites and sulfurs, the purity, they're all over the place. Oftentimes they won't land for you, and you might want to try some flight shots. You can be patient, especially if there's nectar sources around. They don't spend a lot of time on flowers when they do land. The Papilionidae, the swallowtails, we all know them. They tend to be flighty, but when you get them on flowers, you can shoot away. They tend not to sit still when they're nectaring. But we see them, and sometimes you'll wait for it to sit. But most of the times, if you see them hovering around a flower, shoot away. And then you'll learn individuals, like on these guys, it really helps to get a shot of the underside of the wings, the ventral side. These are the brush-footed, the big showy ones, really variable family, the Nymphalidae. The brush-footed butterflies are the ones that many of us know and see. They're in our gardens. They're cosmopolitan, or depending on the species, very local in their distributions. these are all over the map. Some are perchers, some are don't stop for you. These guys, lower right-hand corner, are this the Hesperiidae, the skippers, in particular these little guys, the little flames, the little orange and yellow flames, the grass skippers. It's a subfamily in that family. They are they'll land for you, but when they fly, they'll dart away and so often get out of reach. But the key on these is to try and get a ventral shot, like all of these little skippers, which can be confusing. This family, for those of you who are new here, these are kind of like the sparrows of butterflies. They're tricky. But all of us who vet butterflies, who will look at your photos, it helps us if we get an underside shot. And these will mostly perch for you like this, but they will also sort of hold their wings open in a V. But we really like these ventral shots on these grass skippers. This is a metal mark. I wish we had. Vermont is a great state, even though it doesn't have metal marks, right? This is it's southern U.S. into the tropics. This family, as if butterflies weren't beautiful enough. Like these have little metallic, like gold and colorful silver markings as part of their scales. So metal marks we don't have, but I will say, if you're anywhere and you get a metal mark, they sit. They pose for you. They're not easily flushed. And when you get a butterfly like that sitting, it's heaven. That thing's called little metal mark. So you're going to get to know these families, and you behave accordingly depending on the family. But the other thing is, like, depending on your situation, you can know butterflies as individuals. And so I was photographing butterflies in Maine. It was for the state of Maine. They were actually paying me to photograph rare butterflies. It was a really good gig. And I was in a wetland, and this was the only flowering swamp milkweed in this wetland. And so what I did, and butterflies were coming and going to it. So I stood back about 4 feet from it. I'll show you the video. And I stood back from it and I waited. I just waited till butterflies would come in. I got full of ticks, but I sat, and there's the butterfly I was after. This is a mulberry wing, right? And it came in, I walked in, got the picture, right? And so, the situation here is really just, you can be patient with them. Like if you've got butterflies flying around in a wetland, but they're coming to a nectar source, hang out by the nectar source, wait for them to come in and pose for you. And I was there probably for an hour, and I had nice photos because this is just the sun was good, the light was good, and I could get really nice photos of these things while they were nectaring on really what was really among the very few available nectar sources. I've even thought about going to places and bringing in a potted swamp milkweed, waiting for butterflies to come. And they're going to come anywhere, and you're going to photograph them wherever you can. This is one of the azures on a bottle cap, and this is a butterfly called a southeastern species called Yell's skipper on bird crap. This is copulating long dash skippers. And this is Robert Michael Pyle, the great lepidopterist and conservationist and writer. Kent was with me when I photographed that. He came to Vermont at the start of the project 20 some odd years ago. And his life, Harris's checker spot, we put it there on his nose. But you're going to photograph them wherever they can. You're going to find them, like they'll stick around. Like I was able to slip my finger under these long dash skippers to get that photo. So, as far as the butterflies, like just watch them. You don't necessarily have to be eager. Be, like I say, calm and aware, but like be patient with them. Let them come to you. It's, many of us are birders, and we know when birders are too eager, right? We know when an eager birder gets too close to a bird and ruins it for the rest of us. So just be calm with them, and you get to enjoy them also as you're learning their ways. So we can now go to phones, and to start our little proper camera discussion here. And here is really a situation. This is 4 different ways to observe at the left there what we were photographing. And here's Randy, and he's got an old point and shoot. This is actually, I took this shot in 2005 before the iPhone debuted. And Randy had a point and shoot, and he's shooting this right on top of it. Tom had a DSLR with a 100 millimeter macro and a pop-up flash. Bruce had the gear that essentially that I shoot with, a DSLR with a 180 macro and a flash. And this is Clark Schiffer. He's gone now. He had a camera, probably with film in it and a net, right? So they were shooting. This, where Randy is, this is where most of us are working with our phones, okay? So, and it's a tough way to work with a phone. And that, by the way, that's what we were shooting. We were shooting a dragonfly posed on that little pine. That's my photo of it. And I was about 3 or 4 feet away from it when I shot it with my serious camera gear, right? But if you're shooting with a phone or you're in the field and you've got a net, this is something I'm going to reserve for the end of the discussion for when we get to the Q&A. Like a lot of us, if you're carrying nets and a phone, you sort of have decisions to make. Like, do I want to try and net this thing and photograph it? Or do I want to just photograph it, like do my best and not try to catch it? And it varies by situation and butterfly. You know, like some butterflies are skittish. Like, you know, commas, oddly enough, they're showy. They can be hard to photograph. Like they'll land on the road and you'll try and get close enough for a decent shot, particularly an underwing shot with their wings folded, and they fly, you know, and you follow them and they keep flying. And you might want to say, I'm just going to catch the thing and I'm going to take its picture after I've caught it. And Dana can put a link for you in the chat or wherever. I've got a video on net technique and photography. And this is something I did in the first 8 years, the first Atlas. I shot hundreds, if not 1,000 or more butterflies this way. It was a very effective way to survey a site. Go in, catch it. There's an extraction method that I show you in the video, how to safely remove the butterfly, take its picture, let it go, right? So there's a balancing act when it comes to nets and cameras. I won't go into it a lot now, but we can talk about it if people are interested afterwards. So phone photography. And what I'm going to do is a lot of the concepts that I'm going to give you in phone photography apply to you as well if you're using a point and shoot, a DSLR and mirrorless. So like the photographers here with serious gear, hang with me because we're going to get to you. But a lot of these principles apply to you as well. So phones, as I said, you know, like you, and many of you already know this, forgive me if you do. But as you're approaching your butterfly, yeah, you can aim your camera and tap your shutter button. But I always tap the phone. And what you do when you tap the phone is you tell the phone to focus. Wherever you tap on your phone screen, the phone will focus on what's there. So as as I was approaching that hair streak in that first example I gave you, I kept tapping my phone as I walked before I took the photo. So when you tap on the butterfly in your screen, you're telling the phone, hey, you, focus on this, okay? But there's something else happens that's really important when you tap on your screen. Yes, you focus, but you do another thing, and it's represented by this blue dot in the focus square. You meter, okay? When you tap your screen, two things happen. You tell your phone to focus on this thing. You also tell your phone to read light on this thing. That's metering. You're telling your phone what to use in order to make a good picture. And what I want you to use is the light that's coming off this butterfly. We couldn't do this with film cameras. We couldn't tell it where to measure light. We had light meters. We would just aim it at the scene, you know, and the camera was a light meter in some regards. But when you tap your screen, you're saying to your phone, read the light here. And you should tell it to read the light on the butterfly. And you can tap anywhere. right? But the point here is if the butterfly is on the center of your screen, and usually on the phones, wherever you tap, it will do both. It will focus and read light. And so metering is really important. And it's something I'm going to get to when we get to the other cameras. So you can also change the camera's decision, right? Like when you tap and focus and meter, you can override the camera's decision on what it decided to set itself at in order to make the picture. Usually it does a good job and you don't have to do this. It's not something that you'll fuss with. But once you've tapped, many of you can see this on your phones. Once you tap, this is an iPhone. I don't know how other phones do this. Once you tap, there's a little sun and a scale that shows up next to where you tapped. And if you press on that sun and slide it up or down, you can adjust the exposure of the image you're about to take. Not the one you've already taken, but one you're about to take. If for some reason things look too dark, you can slide that sun upward and the whole thing will get lighter. Like if it's looking like it's too bright and washed out, you can slide that sun down and it'll get darker. So you can actually control the exposure a little bit. I don't do this a lot because usually the camera's pretty good at making a decision on how to take the picture, but you can do that. There's other things you can do. You can lock focusing and metering on your camera the way you tap and hold it. But we're not going to get into that now because most of the time, tap and shoot, tap and shoot, tap and shoot. The other thing about your phones, and this actually is probably somewhat misplaced. This is more so the case for other cameras. I shouldn't have put it here, but like, and this is true for those of you with point and shoot cameras, not phones, and DSLRs, use your flash. Not all the time, but consider using your flash, even on a sunny day. Like your point and shoot camera might not want to use the flash, but you are going to have instances where you're going to want to add light to the scene. And this is an artificial situation. I darkened this photo in Photoshop. This is a mangrove skipper I shot in Florida. It was backlit. I'm aiming at the sky. There's a lot of light in the sky, and the camera is basically saying, whoa, things are bright. And some of you may already know what a classically backlit photo is. If there's a lot of light in the background, your subject is going to be too dark. One way to deal with that is throw some of your own light from your phone or your camera onto the subject. And if you do, your backlit butterfly goes from that to this, simply by adding light, okay? This is not essential, but like for making pretty butterfly photos, adding light is good. Light is your friend with butterflies, I'll show you some other examples of this. But I tend not to do it with my phone. Like if I've got a situation where my phone is my only camera, the butterflies are sitting there, like if they're copulating, sometimes I might throw some light on them. It makes for a better picture, even if it's sunny, okay? So like you've got extra light, and this is true for those of you with point and shoots and DSLRs. You've got extra light, use it. Here is a butterfly I was asked to photograph in Maine. It's an Appalachian eyed brown, okay? And it was high noon, and you can tell because there are shadows out on the outer margins of the wing here. There were some ridges in the venation and the wing itself, and the sun was overhead. This is not ideal time to shoot butterflies at noon. You really want low angled sunlight. It's a great time. The butterflies are out late morning to late afternoon, But this thing was, and the other thing about this butterfly is it flies around the woods. It's one of our few species that do so. And so I got this shot without a flash. I said, I don't like that photo. I don't like these shadows here on the edge of the wings. So watch what happens to the butterfly when I flipped on my flash. Sort of disregard what happens to the background. It gets darker. I won't explain why. But I hit this for the next photo. I turned on my flash and took another shot. And there's the butterfly with my light, supplied light. You get a better sense of what this butterfly looks like, okay? No flash, flash. A lot of people don't like to shoot with flash. I needed this butterfly. I needed a good photo of this butterfly. The background's a little weird. We wanted to see what this butterfly looks like. So I like, rather than that photo, I like that photo. And that's what extra light can do for you. So use it. You've got it. Consider using it. Don't feel obligated to use it because we're mostly out shooting in good light, but just be aware that it's your friend. So now I want to move from on your phone to these lenses on the back of your phone, okay? And some of us have 2 or 3. I've got 3 on my iPhone 15. And when you aim your phone at a butterfly and tap, or even before you tap, you will sometimes see this lower left on your screen. You will see options. And those are options for 3 lenses, okay? The 1x lens, which is sort of the default lens, is actually on my phone, and I believe on most iPhones, is the highest resolution lens. Depending on a few camera settings, it will most of the time take your best photo, okay? And there is no 2x lens, at least on my iPhone 15. You could tap that, but all that does is zoom the 1x lens, but it doesn't really zoom the 1x lens. These are not telephoto lenses. These are fixed lenses. So when you squeeze on you pinch the screen of your phone to zoom in on something, you're actually not zooming with a lens. You're merely cropping the photo, okay? So it's not a genuine zoom when you squeeze and spread your fingers. That is not like a telephoto lens. That is what we call a digital zoom. You're not really gaining much by doing that. If you've got the thing in the screen with the 1x lens, take a picture. I mean, there are some advantages to zooming, which I'll talk about in a sec. But, if you shoot with the 1x and you can get close enough, that's going to be your highest resolution photo. I actually shoot butterflies and other things that might be far away with the 3x lens. So I will tap my screen and choose the 3 because that is a telephoto lens. It's not telephoto, it's just a higher magnification lens, right? And you can zoom on that. You can zoom on mine, it'll go from 3 to 15x. Again, it's not a genuine 15x zoom. It's just a crop, okay? And the 0.5x lens, that's what we normally consider a wide angle lens, that 0.5x lens. And you can select it on your screen. But the thing about the 0.5x lens is it works as a macro lens. It allows you to bring your camera very close to a subject that's going to sit there, okay? If you've got like a plant, you've got a cooperative butterfly, or you've got a caterpillar that's not going anywhere, and you want to get a really good close photo, choose the 0.5x lens. Like some of you may not be making these decisions, and you're trying to photograph something close, and the camera keeps jumping and focusing on something in the background. Like you can't get the focus because the camera's doing wacky things. But if you're trying to photograph like a tree bud or a small flower or a small caterpillar, actively choose the 0.5 lens and move in really, really close. I'm talking inches, and you'll get a really nice photo. I shoot a lot of really tiny things like tree buds, right, with my camera on the 0.5x lens. And that's really the closest thing to a macro lens on a camera, as best I know. Because frankly, I don't know. That's closest thing to your macro lens on a phone. And frankly, I don't shoot a lot with phones. Like I do this is about all I do. As far as your phone goes, to summarize, tap to focus and meter, tap the screen, tap the subject that you're photographing, tap the butterfly. Consider using your flash. Admittedly, it's tougher to do on a phone. I tend to use that 3x lens. So like if I'm somewhere out shooting butterflies and I know I'm going to be shooting butterflies, I leave the phone on. I leave the 3x lens selected. Oftentimes you'll lose it. It'll go back to the 1x lens. So you got to reselect on your screen the 3x lens and just start shooting with that. I may get some folks who disagree with me at the end of this, but that's how I shoot butterflies with a phone, the 3x lens. Okay, we're going to keep going. We're running, we're now going to go to point and shoots. Okay. And I know that there are birders among you, and some of you have these mega zoom point and shoots, or some of you might still have. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I can do it after once we get to questions. But like those of you who have what I call real cameras, I'm going to tell you how I shoot with my point and shoot cameras. There is a butterfly in that black circle in the garden there. I promise you. And I was standing about 15 feet away, maybe a little closer, 10 or 15 feet away from that butterfly. And I have one of those mega zooms that I use for shooting birds or shooting things really close. They're really amazing cameras. They're called bridge cameras. I wrote an article about these for Audubon magazine. I don't have a link to it, but I can send it. We can get it to you if you want. The birders know these cameras. So what I did was, rather than approach the butterfly and use the macro lens on the macro setting on the camera, I just zoomed it. I zoomed it to 60 power, 60x is the zoom, and I shot this butterfly. Okay, this is a silver spotted skipper. I promise you that's the butterfly that was in that circle. And I shot it by standing 10 or 15 feet away and zooming the camera. So like, I'm not this close when I took that photo. I'm like back here in the wall. I'm like back here farther than where Clark is. I didn't have to approach the butterfly and risk scaring it away. I just stood back and zoomed. Here I am in Maine. Notice that's my shadow. The sun is to my back. And I'm saying this is an ideal shooting situation. My shadow, I'm not letting my shadow go, cover the butterfly. So I just zoomed my point and shoot, and I got that photo of a painted lady, right? I mean, look at this. Look at the colors on this thing, right? And this is not a great camera. This is like a crappy mega zoom. I mean, they're great. They are wonderful cameras. It's not a high quality camera. But I stood back, zoomed, and shot. Same thing here. I promise you there's a butterfly. This is in Florida. Again, early morning. Sun is there. It's at my back. And I shot that common buckeye. So if you've got a point and shoot with the zoom, and you know there's the tulip setting, and you go, I got to get a macro of this thing, don't bother. Stand back, zoom, and shoot. And that's really true of these guys. The birders among you have these. They do have the tulip setting. They do have a macro mode. Just zoom it and shoot. Okay. They're a little tougher with your pocket-sized point and shoots because their zooms might only be 3 or 4x. I've got a point and shoot that's an 8x zoom that I like a lot. It fits in the side pocket of my Carhartts, And if I'm just out, I can pull that thing out of my pocket and I can get all the butterfly shots I need with that. So that's the case. Now, there's a lot to be said about these point and shoots, okay? And I'm not going to say it now because I really want to wrap up and go to questions. But, what happens when you take a picture is some of you who might remember the olden days of film know that there are these things called shutter speeds and lens openings or apertures, right? And that constitutes an exposure. There's this other thing called ISO. We're not going to have time to talk about this, but I can later. I'd be happy to talk about it after the webinar to any of you. But basically, well, I'm going to wait, but I will say this. When I shoot with my serious camera gear or a point and shoot. For those of you who know this stuff, I shoot aperture priority and I open the lens all the way, unless I'm using a macro lens. Like for your point and shoot camera, the ones where you might stand back and zoom, put it in aperture priority, open your lens wide. Don't worry about depth of field if you know what that is, and start shooting. And I'm happy to talk about that. Oh, there's the light. We already covered that. Here's that tulip setting that if you have time and you're shooting a macro thing that's not going to fly away, these point and shoots are amazing. They're like having a magnifying lens as a camera. So I want to end we're going to talk a little bit about DSLRs, but I want to talk one about metering, okay, with your point and shoot or your DSLR. Remember, I told you when you have a phone, if you tap the screen, it focuses in meters. Depending on your point and shoot or your SLR or your mirrorless, you can't necessarily tap the screen to focus in meter. You use your shutter release button and you focus. You have the camera autofocus and the camera will meter. So this metering business on these more sophisticated cameras above your phone, they are ways of measuring light in the world in order to decide on how to take a picture. And this is if you yourself are not deciding how to take the picture, you're letting the camera do that thinking for you. And so when a camera reads a scene before you take the photo, it can do it in any number of ways. And those of you who may know, these are only 3 of the ways. Like the camera in this evaluative or matrix mode, it basically looks at the whole scene. It looks at the butterfly, it looks at the greenery, it might look at the sky, and it says, okay, I'm going to average this thing, and then I'm going to decide how to set myself so that this person gets a decent photo. Boom, takes the picture. Another way the camera might size up the scene is it might look at what's in the middle of the scene and say, okay, I'm going to assume that this person has something in the middle and this person wants to photograph what's there. So the camera's saying to itself, forgive me for personifying a camera, the camera's basically saying, okay, I'm going to measure light off of mostly what's in the center of the screen, and what's around it, I'm going to consider that less so. Like maybe 80% of my decision making on how to make this picture will be based on the light coming off of what's in the middle versus what's around it, 20% around it. And then there's another mode where you can have the camera measure light only on what is in the middle or what your metering spot touches, and the rest be damned. Like you're going to tell the camera, I only want you to measure light and make your picture based on what's in the middle of the scene. And here's an example, a real world example. Like this is that averaging. This was a spider on the snow. And this is that averaging method. Like you can see the picture's got some of the graininess of the snow. It's got the spider, but it's an average decision. The camera said, wow, I got bright snow here and I have a dark spider. I'm going to split the difference and try to make a good photo. Okay. I could have hit the spider with a flash and that would have helped lighten it up. But what instead, in the next photo, I told the camera in this spot metering mode to only make your decision on the spider and disregard the snow. And here's my photo. Okay. So the spider is now properly metered, more or less. It read light off the spider and made the photo. Like the snow is gone. The snow's blown out. I don't really care about the snow. I wanted to see detail on the spider. So instead of that, I shot this way. I told the camera I put the spot on the spider and told it to read light only off the spider. That's the difference between these different metering modes. And it's really good to know them. And basically on your point and shoots, I want you to stand back, fire away, stand back, zoom, fire away, meter on the butterfly if you know how to meter on your phone, center weighted or spot metering on the butterfly, add some light. With your point and shoots, I often flip up my flash and add light when I'm shooting stuff with the point and shoot, particularly even if I'm far away. If you're really close, you'll blow it out with the light. Open the lens wide. These are the people who know this. Open the lens wide and shoot aperture priority, or this program mode, which we can talk about if anybody has questions about it. So that's the point and shoot settings. I won't go into this because I really want to end in just a couple of minutes. The other thing I actually haven't talked about on your point and shoots is this item number 6, burst mode. That is to setting your camera to shoot multiple photos as you hold down the shutter button. That's your right constant photos. And most wildlife photographers shoot that way. Don't take, if you've got a camera that will do it, including your iPhone, shoot a lot, shoot fast, particularly on things that are moving or flying. One warning here is this: if you're in this burst mode and you say, okay, I'm getting some good shots, now I want to use my flash, and you turn on your flash, on many of these point and shoot cameras, the flash won't work in burst mode. The camera can't fire the flash repeatedly as fast as you might be shooting in this burst mode. Like these burst modes are like 10 photos per second, right? So you're going to generate a lot of photos, but if you're not uploading from a phone directly to eButterfly or to iNaturalist, and you're working on these, you're dumping photos onto your computer, you can sort through them, pick a good one. And burst mode is how we shoot. It's how wildlife photographers shoot. So lastly, and I'm only going to just spend a couple minutes here, the big serious cameras with bigger lenses. This is how I shoot. And for those of you who know these cameras, I did this a while back. I looked at all my butterfly photos. And I broke the f-stops, the aperture, the lens opening into these categories. And so this is with a 100 millimeter macro. There's like 4,300 photos. Most of them I shot, with those of you who know these cameras and these lenses know, is a stopped down lens. A lens with a narrower lens opening, a high f-stop number, a small aperture. And that's how you shoot butterflies with a macro lens and get everything in focus, okay? These open lenses, these apertures of lower numbers, tend to be, we're probably with point and shoots, like with the serious camera gear, I'm shooting in the range of f11, f22, and I'm shooting aperture priority, okay? I'm choosing these lens openings on my own, and I'm letting the camera select a shutter speed. And depending on your lens, for shutter speeds that you need, if you're hand holding, which I recommend you all do, don't bother with a tripod in the field. It's too cumbersome. I hand hold. And if you're hand holding if you're hand holding a camera with a macro or a telephoto lens, your shutter speed needs to be at least twice the focal length of your lens. So if you've got a 100 millimeter lens, you really can't shoot slower shutter speeds than 1/250th. If you've got a 180, which is what I shoot with, I'm shooting 1/400th. I often shoot my butterflies at 1/640th of a second. So, because I'm hand holding, okay? And at those shutter speeds, relatively fast, and these stopped down lenses, there isn't usually enough ambient light to get a good picture. So we add light from our flashes for these photos. And I recognize I may have lost some of you here, but if you're shooting with a fast shutter in a handheld macro that's shooting at like f18 or f22 or even f11, you normally need to add your own light. And things are different now with high cameras that shoot better in low light. You can use your ISO to allow you to get away without using a flash. But I use flash. I don't have a good camera I'm probably going to get one that'll shoot better in low light. But basically, if you've got a DSLR or a mirrorless, for butterflies, I'm shooting aperture priority. I'm hand holding. I'm using higher ISO values or the flash. And my distance from the butterfly depends on the lens that I'm using, And so that's that. Those are the fundamentals. If you're watching this recording, you could spend some more time here or send me a note. And I'll tell you more about shooting this way. I know most of you are using phones, so I didn't want to dwell here too long. So I think I can end there. We're a little over. And I think we could probably take questions. Oh, by the way, this is me now. I'm writing on Substack, and I actually have a photography class there. If you become a paying subscriber for $50, you can take a 4 session online photography class that basically takes this 45-minute lecture and divides it into 5 1-hour sessions, including macro photography for insects. So there's a QR code to my Substack. And there we go. I realize that I pummeled you with a lot of information, but we can take questions. Should I end this? Stop sharing? Maybe I'll stop sharing. Dana, should I stop
Yeah, that
sharing?
works. I also dropped the link to your Substack in the chat so people can get it that way too.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there we are. Okay. Should we do the questions in the Q&A thing, the Q&A or the chat, or?
People can feel free to drop questions you have in the chat and I'll read them out. Or if you feel comfortable, you're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask Bryan directly.
Okay. Ken to the right. Oh, Meadow Fritz are flying in Bennington, I see, from the great Terry Armada. Let's see. I think there is also isn't there a question and answer thing? But I guess I'm not seeing that. So yeah, any questions? I realize I rushed through a lot of the point and shoot and DSLR mirrorless stuff, but I'm hoping that this might help, particularly those of you who are using phones.
So Kent makes a mention that you can shoot short videos as well with cameras and then later select a frame or a couple of frames.
Yeah.
Those, which I've definitely had to do before.
Right. And you can even just grab a screenshot if you've got the video. And when you're taking video, I don't know, I could be wrong about this. The camera's more forgiving on light and focus, you've got a lot of frames there. So you'll often find something you can actually look at the video, stop it, and crop it right on the camera and probably upload it to eButterfly or iNet. Wow, we might no other questions. We may actually wrap it up. We all go outside. Everyone wants to go outside.
Yeah, it's nice today. While we're waiting for anybody else to have any questions, I just wanted to remind everyone that this is being recorded. I'll put it up unlisted on YouTube. Everyone who is registered for this event will get the recording, and I'll send out some of the links that we talked about today as well in an email, and you'll get that tomorrow morning. I also wanted to invite you that next week on May 6th, also at 12, we'll be doing butterflying by habitats. So learning how you can use different habitats to find your target butterflies. And that'll be with Kent McFarland, who is here. I'll drop the registration link in the chat now and also send that out with that email. And just a reminder that the Zoom links I'm sending out manually, so you'll receive them Tuesday morning. And if you sign up after Tuesday morning, I'll be sending them out later than that.
And I've got one more, Kevin mentioned tapping the phone screen was really helpful. I'll mention, if you don't believe this tapping the phone screen, many of you are probably doing it, but if you're shooting a sunset with your phone and you're letting your phone make the decision, you're just holding it up there and you're letting your phone make the decision, and you've got some foreground in the sunset shot and sky, the beautiful sunset. Tap on the sky on your phone and watch what happens. The sun, the colors because you're telling your phone, hey, read light on this beautiful sky. Don't read light on the foreground that may actually be a little dim or dark. So if you tap the sunset, if you tap the sky, the phone will magically turn the sky into the genuine orange and red that you see. What'll happen is the foreground will get darker. Like the phone can only take one picture, although the phones now can get the best of both. They do this in-camera processing. They actually play with your photo before you see it. right? So if you are shooting a sunset or anything where there's marked difference between light and dark areas in your scene, this could be a landscape shot. You could be shooting the Grand Canyon, you know, tap on the canyon walls, tap on the beautiful sunset. Your phone will say, wow, okay, this person wants me to read the light off this beautiful sunset. I will do that. And the photo will be transformed and will be much different. You're going to capture the light that you want, the beautiful light that you want. And yes, Ken says this, right? And this is kind of why I think I had this guy is full of crap slides, right? Like if you know, Ken says, for those who haven't seen it, any photo is better than no photo, right? You'd be amazed sometimes at what folks can verify from even a terrible photo, you know. And it says the iPhone also has powerful editing tools. You can really, really lighten up a photo after you've taken it, you know. It's harder to it's you know, if it's too light, it's often hard to reduce the amount of light in the photo. If you have a photo that's too dark and you think your butterfly is underexposed, we can usually get it. A lot of what I was talking about was having your camera take the photo from the get-go, like having your camera set to take the right photo given those circumstances. But if you've got some dark photos, we can rescue them, you know, and you can even do that on the phone. And iNat even lets you do that when you're vetting images. You can lighten an iNat or darken an iNat photo to help you identify what's there. Well, that might be, we did well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we did well. And like I say, if you're involved in the project and you've got there's my phone, and you're involved in if you're involved in the project and you've got any questions, send me a note, you know, and I don't know, I kind of lose sleep over this photography stuff. I like teaching it. I like people to get the most out of these computers with lenses attached to them. So, and it's butterfly season. There's lots to celebrate with our eyes and our phones. So thanks, everyone.
Very true. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week, and hopefully we'll see you next week in the next webinar. Bye.
Bye.